As massive tech layoffs continue starting from November 2022 till now, and some even before that really, brokerage houses warn of uncertain times ahead for the IT sector. We try and decode the possible reasons and potential future for the IT sector really. Joining us for this special discussion, we have Shantanu Rooj, founder and CEO of TeamLease EdTech. And along with him, we have Sanchita Mukherjee, financial services expert. Thank you both for joining us. Shantanu, I'll begin by asking you, while we've been, of course, speaking to experts through yesterday and all of today, and the clear answer we seem to get is the pandemic and the over-anticipation really of hiring during the pandemic when people were using tech more than ever before. However, is this really just an over-anticipation or now really a cost-cutting drive you feel?
So, thank you, Sakshi. So, if you see during the pandemic, what definitely happened is there was a abundance of VC funding and PE funding coming into a lot of the startups and IT companies there. That actually led to anticipation of demand continuously going up, and that most IT companies and tech-enabled companies stocked up on huge amount of manpower, at times at unreasonable prices. Now that there has been their recognition of the fact that globally the entire world is facing a recession and the demand from the Western markets are going to go down, I think there is a drive towards more rationalization of the cost, and hence some of these layoffs are happening.
All right, Sanchita, to you now. During the pandemic, there have been, of course, reports of exceptional compensation really for the new recruits in the IT sector, also massive hikes and fringe benefits. Do you think that's perhaps one of the factors for the number of layoffs we are witnessing currently, which are massive, because all of these rewards were unsustainable?
Yes, thank you, Sakshi, for having me. Growth at any cost is what you're talking about, and that has been the watchword of most developed economies. I would like to dive a little deeper into this and talk about how in India per se, this entire situation is actually the cause of imported inflation. Indirectly, this is an imported wage inflation which has happened across the globe. During the pandemic years and even before, the developed markets have been on a spree of printing dollars, something which is known as quantitative easing, and they had record low interest rate with absolutely high levels of dollar liquidity sploshing around the globe. This contributed to immense amount of wage inflation in developed markets across the world, especially in the technology firms, especially Silicon Valley companies, startups and all of that, wherein recruitment was done at exorbitant rates, salaries were paid and all of that. Now the situation has completely reversed itself. In the sense, Federal Reserve in United States and all other central banks around the globe are on a very, very aggressive rate hike mechanism in terms of they have increased interest rates very aggressively. So the cost of companies has gone up substantially, and they are cost cutting, what Shantanu just mentioned. It cannot be sustainable at a growth at any cost kind of a level model. Hence, if you were to look at Indian economy, we are largely very self-contained and a very diversified economy. Manufacturing, in fact, is showing humongous green shoots. PLI, production-linked incentive scheme and all of that is generating employment. However, information technology, which is the IT and the tech sector, is outward looking. Technological services exports is a large part of our export basket. So therein we are suffering because the globe as such is looking at recessionary and inflationary pressures of wage inflation, and cost cutting is a way to go about it.
All right, Shantanu, then, what to your mind really is the impact of this on existing employees and for those eager to enter the IT industry? Many even, of course, writing anonymously on social media and sharing their individual stories, some talking about the sudden pain and uncertainty, while other existing employees mentioning how demotivated they feel and, how demotivated they are currently in such an atmosphere.
Okay, so layoffs definitely put people in their self-doubt, and it's going to be a down phase of anybody's career. But the good part here in this case, Sakshi, is the fact that I think most IT companies are seeing that the corrective layoff that they were doing all this while is tailing off now. And most probably at TeamLease, we believe that the Q4 onwards will start seeing some sort of an uptick in the hiring again. But the trends that we have seen there is that companies have try to replace high-cost resources and try to ensure that their current bench is reskilled and upskilled to take up some of these roles. Overall, there is a drive towards making them more capital efficient. There has been some sort of freshers hiring context altogether, of course, and there have been two different trends that we have seen here. One is some companies have stopped hiring freshers, whereas some of the others have actually delayed onboarding of the freshers who were already offered some sort of a job out of campus. So I think there is a bit of turmoil at this point in time, but our forecast is that the next 18 months are going to be much better than what we have seen in the last 2 quarters.
All right, you say that things are going to be better in the next 18 months, but brokerage houses are, of course, issuing warnings for the IT sector. Sanchita, your thoughts on that? And, of course, also many employees anonymously tweeting, posting, and also saying that, look, you know, why should the mid-level and the lower rung really suffer? These were strategies decided by the top management. So your take on that?
No, I completely agree. I'm completely with the people, the employees who have been laid off. It is a very tough time. And I think a lot of people are getting advices in terms of upskilling, in looking at employment in sectors which make a lot of sense, in getting their resume in place, networking to the hilt, because, you know, research has shown that 80% of jobs actually can be obtained with aggressive networking. So all of these things I'm sure people are writing about, talking about, doing on the sidelines. Having said that, it is a little uncertain. There will be volatility, at least for the first half of this year, because not because of the United States of America. You know, there again, I'm quite sure there's a lot of news, feet on street analysts who are coming up with reports that they just might avoid recession. But having said that, Europe is in a doldrum. So there's a lot of pressure which is coming even from clients which are outwardly facing Europe as a market. So yes, uncertainty is the watchword right now. And what one can do is to upskill and make oneself relevant in this kind of a market. There's a lot of pressure also on this budget, on this government to come up with relevant tax breaks, to come up with relevant ideas in terms of further absorbing this workforce which have been culled from the IT services sector.
All right, Sanchita, very quickly to you again. Then, of course, you've been talking about the global impact, but many are talking about how this is now trickling into India. What do you have to say about the India impact really then?
So again, I would stress upon the fact that India, by and large, is a very self-contained economy, and that has held us very well in terms of prices. Even during the pandemic, one can see we emerged very well as an economy because of the fact that we are self-contained. However, we are not completely insulated to the world. And services which are oriented towards the developed markets, towards exports, definitely will be on the receiving end of recessionary pressures, especially in the European and parts of US markets. So one has to be very, very cognizant of that fact. In fact, if you are reading reports, a lot of employees who were planning to take a shift, a stint in Europe have been laid off. A lot of freshers who had gotten absorbed from campuses and were planning to go out to developed markets have been laid off. Within India per se, I think the government has done tremendous heavy lifting in terms of putting money into the infrastructure sector, removing supply chain bottlenecks, and manufacturing. Manufacturing, the PLI, the China Plus One theory that the government is working on, the Make in India, is actually showing a lot of attrition in terms of employment. So one possibly needs to look out for those numbers as well, not just IT or services sectors numbers.
All right. Thank you both so much really for sharing your thoughts in what seems to be, of course, a developing story unfolding right before our eyes. That's all from business news right now.